Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masechtas Chulin daf Chaf Dalid. We are going to begin on Chaf Dalid Amud Aleph by the new Mishnah. So kosher b'kohanim posel b'levim, kosher b'levim posel b'kohanim. And this is the theme that we've been going throughout this parak, talking about how certain things are kosher for this, like for example for an aisle versus a keves. So we discussed this about other things as well. So here we are about a bird, b'nei yoyne and toirim. So too, Kohen and Levi, what's kosher for that is possible for the other. So let's see the Gemara. Turn about Kohanim b'mumim psuin b'shanim ksherim. When it comes to a Kohen, if they have a mum, as we know, they can't do the avoda. However, even if they're apparently old or very old, 100 years old, 200 years old, it's not a problem. The Gemara is going to elaborate on that. Levim b'mum and ksherim b'shan psuin. However, the living the other way around. Even if they have a mum, they could still do their avoda. However, they are not allowed to do the avoda after a certain age. Nimsa. So we from here, kosher b'kohanim, possible levim, kosher b'levim, possible kohanim. So minahanibil. So the Tana Rabban of the pasuk says zois. So the fact that it says the word zois, asher levim, so matal loimer lefi shenemar, it says u'meben chamishim shana yoshev. It says after when they're 50 years old, then they should return, which is mashmat 50 years. That's the cutoff, that age. So lamanu levim shashanim paisim hen. We see clearly that when it comes to the Levium, that you have until 50 years. So after that, they'll apostle you. So that clearly we see as far as the oldest level. And Rashi says over here, Levium, it's not just the oldest age, but Pachis meben shleishim. Even when they're younger than 30, it's too young. Yos meben nun. So it's only a 20-year window, which is allowed based on this pasuk. Now, being that that's the first drasha, so then the Gemara continues and says like this. So again, so Yochel mum poisem hen. Maybe you would think also Levim, if they have a mum, also possible. But then it makes sense because Ma Kohanim Shein Hashanim Poisem Behen Mum and Poisem Behen. Madach when it comes to Kohanim, in which even if they're much older than 50, they can still do the avoda, but they can't if they have a mum. So Levim Shashanim Poisem Behen Erodin Shehei Poisem Mum and Poisem Behen. So then certainly we should say the Levim that if they have a mum, they should be apostle. Talmud Zois Ashul Levim Zos Levim Ve'inacheres Levim. It's only this law that applies to the Levim, namely that the din of shanim. However, when it comes to anything else, we don't apply, and therefore there's no din of an issue of a mum. So yochli heya kohanim psulin b'shanim, and you can now look at the kabel chayim the other way around and say maybe the kohanim, as they have a mum, would passel, so shanim should also passel. Odinu, it's kabel chayim malavim shein mum and poislin behen shanim poisel behen. When it comes to Levium, a mum will not passel them, but shanim will. So kanim shamum and paisel behem and she shanim paisel behen. So Talmud Omer asher Levium, that this ruling is only to the Levium, lo asher kohanim, but not to the kohanim. So it's specifically to the Levium that they have a cutoff of shanim, but not of mum, and for the kohanim it's the opposite. Yochel af b'shil v'beis olamim kain. So this is an important point, that as Rashi says, she'ein avodas Levium elwa Sha'irim, Mishayrin. So in Mishkan Shiloh, as well as the Beis HaMikdash, they would open up the gates and they would sing. They weren't involved in heavy lifting, in which in the time of the Mishkan it was necessary to do that. So Talmud Leimer, la'avoida avoida, the avoidas masa. So it's the avoida of carrying. So Lomar Diel Bazman shahavoida b'katev. It's only when you have things on your shoulders, namely that you have to move things around. So therefore, interestingly enough, this cutoff of 50 years old, in which person's muscle mass starts to weaken, clearly that's basically what the Gemara is saying here. It doesn't matter about lifting. It's harder for older people to lift, but it doesn't matter because there's no din of lifting in the Beis HaMikdash. comparable to the Mishkan. So, Kosev Echad Omer Miben Chamish V'Asim Shana B'Mala. This is actually Tosefta is brought down in Rashi and Chumash. It says that they start when they're 25. Because of Echad Omer Ben Shloshim, 30. So Iyashul Omer Shloshim Shekvar Nemer Chav Hey. Yashul Omer Chav Hey Shekvar Nemer Shloshim. HaKetzad. How do you understand these psukim? They're direct contradictions. You can't say 25 if it says 30. You can't say 30. It says 20. Which one is it? So your answer is they're both true. How are they both true? So Chav Hey is Lilmoid. They start learning about the avodah at 25. However, V'shloishim la'avodah, they only start doing the avodah once they're 30 years old, which means this is like a 5-year college program. Mekan, so maybe it's not so bad if it takes you 5 years to finish high school, okay? So Mekan, what Talmud Shlora Simin Yafa b'Mishnaso Hey Shanim Shuvin Uraya. If a person spent 5 years and they still haven't reached success, so then they're probably in a lot of trouble. They're probably not going to do so well, right? It says Rashi Loimed b'Shachla, you keep forgetting all you're learning. So after 5 years, if you're not successful, then that's it. Rabbi Yosef Gimel Shanim. Actually, the cutoff should be 3 years. You have to be able to see some success in your learning. Shnemar Lagadlam Shanim Sholish. That when it comes to growing and learning, with 3 years. Limdaim Sefer, to teach them a book of a Lashon Kazdim and to understand the language of the Kazdim. So it's only 3 years. The Idach, it says it takes 3 years. You should master it. No, Mashani Lashon Kazdim de Kolil. When we're dealing with, we're not talking about learning Torah and learning about the avodah of the Beis Hamikdash. We're talking about just learning a new language. Lashon Kazdim is not a very hard language, apparently. Right? If you do Duolingo for 3 years, you better know it, or else you're never going to pick it up, maybe. Who knows? But it's not the same thing, a language. When it comes to avodah, it's much more difficult. It says Rashi l'hayrid hamishkan l'parko, to dismantle it. When taisel hamid karaisav karashav, right? There's so many different things about the planks, the removing the sockets and the beams. V'shil carbon pevakli. So therefore, because of all these things, it certainly will take a tremendous amount of time. So, homiletically speaking, a lot of people, they give up after they try something, it doesn't work. They try a diet, it doesn't work. But the truth is, you need to give it time. Over here, it's telling us, even when it came to the people, obviously they knew what they were doing on some level. Their parents were involved in the avodah. But once they're 25, it's going to take 5 years to master something, to do it well enough that you can finally get into the groove of success. We don't really find that people didn't do it at age 30, right? Maybe there was some type of a test. But the point is that a lot of times the reason why we don't succeed in things is because we don't give it time. We want an immediate answer. But the truth is, it could be something in which you just have to give it a little bit more time, and then you master it. Question 11. Me'ezegil, yad ezegil, ksherim hakohanim avodas hakahuna, v'lavim la'avodas masa. So we didn't do that yet. We did a little bit of it, but it's not enough. Okay, we'll keep on moving. All right. So Tanurabam, Kayin. This is the answer right here. So when does the Kayin start? So there's no cutoff at the end. Cyrus. He at least have to produce 2 signs of hairs of maturity. Before that, no, because we're going to see the pasuk says ish. He has to be an ish. Ad yiskin kashel avoid, until he gets old. What exactly that means? So mumim psuin boy. We know, of course, mumim are possible by kayin. Ben Levi ben Shloshim ben Chamishim, from 30 to 50 is kashel avoida. Shanim poiselbo. Of course, that means that shanim do posel. The only time we have this shanim cut off, or these age brackets, is davko when it came to in the oil moed in the wilderness. The only way he can be end up being puzzled is if the Levi has a poor voice, or he's not able to sing in unison. Exactly what does that mean, bekoil? So obviously it means he has to have, Levim have to have decent voices. Rabbi Yosi, so So what's the pasuk to substantiate all this as we continue to Chaf Daled Amud Beis? The pasuk says, "Vayhi echad lemechatzaitzurim lemishayurim lashmiya koyel echad." So it's mashma. First of all, it says "Vayhi echad," which means even elderly people, but it says koyel echad. It says Rashi shesrichin vasim es koyel shehi nira koyel echad. It has to be like one voice. So if you have a person that their voice cracks or something like that, and you could detect it because of their poor quality of singing, or their inability to be able to, let's say, hold a beat or something like that, and therefore they're way off in their tunes, then that's the time it'll apostle. So it says, Ad Shiyaskin, until they get older. The Kohen until they get old. What does that mean? So Ad Kam, how is old? 100, 200? So Rabbi Law, Rab Chanina, Ad Shiyirsas. Until his limbs start to shake. Maybe it's the same thing as like a person who's doing a procedure, like brain surgeon. You don't want their limbs to be shaking. So once this happens, it's already, they're a little bit too old to be able to do the avoda. Tanan Hasam. So we learned over there, Mikvois, Bal Kari Chitaval. So you have a Bal Kari who immersed themselves. V'loi hitul mayim, but did not be hitul mayim. So l'kashiyitol, when he does that, Tame, says Rashi, what does that mean? Because Shema Nishar B'fi Alma Sichsuch Kari. If he didn't go to the bathroom before he went to the mikvah, since he already saw it, there was he was a Bal Kari, so it's possible that on his male member there was still the possibility of more Kari that was there, and therefore he would end up becoming Tame again. Says Rashi, Shema Nishar B'fi Alma Sichsuche Kari. Rav Yosi Omer B'choila Uvazakin. If we're talking about someone who is sick, someone who's old, Tameh B'yeled Ubabari Tahar. So this is what it's saying. If we're dealing with someone who is older or sick, so their male member doesn't operate in the same way, in the same healthy manner as a young person. So because they're sick or zucking, some of the Kari may remain. Mashenkin, when we're talking about someone who's healthy, as Rashi says, the Mikari Napikule, everything was released. Okay. So Ad Kama, so Rabbi Law, Rabbi Chanina, Kol Aimed Al Ragloi Achas. Anyone who can stand on one foot, B'chayletz Menalo B'noyel Menaloi, and they can take off from one shoe and put on another shoe, which is actually a very interesting detail, because to this day, in 2026, one determinant factor of how strong you are, how old you are, is how long can you stand on one foot. So this is kind of what's being said. If you're oimed al regal achas and you can take off your shoe and put it back on, it means you have a certain level of balance, and therefore you're still considered strong and healthy. Amalav al Rabbi Chanina Shahaya ben Shmoinim Shana, so he was 80 years old. V'hay oimed al ragloy achas, he stood on the foot. V'chayletz menalo v'noyel menalo, and he was able to take a shoe and put his other one on. Rabbi Chanina chamin v'shemen shesachtani imi biolati hein omduli be'es ziknoisis. This is a little bit of advice. Some warm water and some oil that my mother used to anoint me when I was young, so that's helped me when I'm older. So it's an interesting phenomenon. It's coming to tell us that what you do when you are young will help you when you're old. If you wait and neglect your health when you're young, then it will affect you when you're old. You won't be as strong. Okay, now let's look at question 11. So question 11 again said, what are the age ranges for a Kohen, for a Voda, and for a Levi? So for Kohanim, they have to at least bring Beis Cyrus to be an Ish, and there's another sheet to which I guess we haven't seen yet. Rabbi says Megil Esther, from the time you're 20 years old. Okay, we'll just keep on going until when you're older and V'yirsas and your body shakes. The Levium we know is from 30 to 50. That's obvious. Okay, Tano bottom. Nismali Ziknoi, Roy Lios Shliach Tzibor. Once a person grows a beard, So now they're fit to be able to be to lead the tzibor. So me'amasai kasher avoida. So we said, when can you do the avoida? Mishavish de cyrus, from the time that you just bring 2 hairs. And here's the other answer. Rabbi Omer ani ad shehi ben esrim. You have to be 20 years old. Amar Chisda, my time of the Rabbi. Why does Rabbi say 20? Dechsev, because the pasuk says in Sefer Ezra, V'yamidu es levim miben esrim shana v'mal. It says from 20 years old. L'netzach, for heavy or difficult things. Ad melechas beis Hashem v'idach l'natzach shani. Conquering or very hard work, you're right, is different, and that we want someone who's a little bit older, is 20 years old. But the truth is, a Kohen to do regular avodah, as long as you brought 2 cyrus, that's enough. Okay. It's not Kohanim, it's wasn't Levim. So could Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, the Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, be'esrim v'arba min kaimais, in 24 different places in Tanakh, nikru Kohanim Levim. Kohanim are actually called Levim, but they're really Kohanim. Be'zechem is 1 in 24, but Kohanim Levim b'nei Tzadik. So it says Levim, and one of the people were b'nei Tzadik. We know Tzadik was a Kohen. Tanabana, Ish. The pasuk says Ish mizar chilodar isa mekana Rabbi Elazar katan pasal le'avodim v'efil tam. Doesn't matter if you're healthy, you're non-blemished. If you're a katan, you can't do it because only an Ish falls under the category of a Kohen. To do the avodah. Me'amasei kashul avodah. Mishavish de cyrus, he has to bring 2 hairs, we said. Aval achav kohanim, his brethren, imanichan oisel la'avoid, they will not put him up to do the avodah ashi ben chaf, until he is 20 years old. So says Rashi, who de'in manichan oisel aval rabbanan lo pasluhu. So we're not going to paslu you until the age of 20, but no one's really going to appoint you. Maybe this is Rabbi. Feel apostle the Rabbanan Leisle. It's not even a psul the Rabbanan. The army Rabbi Islay psul the Rabbanan. V'ha Rabbanan he lachat chilhu delay avol diavad avadasuk shera. Okay, let's stop there. So we saw question 11. And that's all we're going to do for that. Let's take a peek now at TA 22. Matai shanim sul b'levi. So I guess you can learn that a couple different ways. Only in the midbar. That's really hard. It should be like be'ezim makoim. I don't know. Umate ein poislin. So it's based mikdash in Shiloh. Umahim ashanim shiksherim la'avoida. That's not a hard question. 30 to 50. That's it. Let's see what I wrote over here. I must have gotten that right. Bizman sheish masoi, okay, shehem srichen lahachlef as a mishkan v'makam b'midbar v'sarch chizuk lasoi savel bizman beis halomim v'gam b'mishkan shiloi ein shanim levim aval levim shoshim ad chamishim v'hem loimdim es ha'avoida mi 25 on 30 shana, and that's I wrote a lot there, but good answer. That's TA 22. Okay. TB 25. Matai shanim poislin b'levi. Matai ein poislin. Exactly the same question. So we'll just mark this up. Hopefully I got the answer correct again. Hopefully they'll ask me the same question again. TB 25. B'levim shanim poislin b'midbar. V'lo b'mishkan shil v'es hamikdash. From 25 to 30 is that Chamish Shanim Shalimad Havoid Vehem Oivdim Mi 30 ad 50 Shanim. Can't beat that. Adkan.